Welcome to the January Donovan Show. Today, we are going to learn more about how you actually build a successful business that's just not, I would say, based on achievements, but actually based on wisdom. And so, our guest today is Angie, and she is fascinating to me because I feel like her stuff is both relevant and timeless. And that's sort of what I've gathered from our conversation. I was in your podcast where it is timeless in the sense that it's rooted in timeless wisdom and yet so fresh because you're putting into context, I think, of the modern woman, the current woman. And so thank you for all that you do. You wrote The Non-Negotiable You, which I love the title, a bestseller. And you've been doing this actually for 25 years. So welcome, Angie, from
Thanks for
California.
having me.
I
Thanks, January. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, well, why don't we start out with just telling maybe the audience a little bit about who you are and why you do what you do?
Yeah, I love that in the intro you said, building a business not just on achievements, because that was really a turning point for me. I really ran my life and my business before on just hitting the mark, achieving, achieving, achieving. And as you know, there's so much more to it than that. And that's what kind of shifted me in my practice and what I do. I'm now personal development, people builder, business builder, coach, and I really work from this foundation of it's you. That's the piece, the main piece of it. And so you have to do that inside work on yourself. So, outside of a coach, I am a mother and of two boys and a husband of, 26 years I've been married. And, we just try to live every day to the fullest.
I love that. I saw that Better Than We're Together. You put that song 26 years. I was looking at Instagram.
Yes.
But that in itself is a celebration and a testimony in itself, because I think it takes a lot of interior work to not just be married for 26 years, but to be fully alive in
Oh,
marriage for 26 years. So I'd love to get to that. But maybe
yeah.
tell me about your transition from that life where you focused on achievement. What was that journey for you so that our readers can kind of even see where they're on the journey of saying, well, wait a minute, maybe I'm settling, maybe I'm putting.
Hmm.
So maybe paint that picture for them.
Yeah, I grew up in a family that was broken, and I lived with my mother who was an alcoholic. So I grew up very fast. I grew up very independent, maybe a little rough around the edges, but also very much a people pleaser. Like I strive to make people happy all the time, to achieve things, to hit benchmarks, to please people. And I realized at one point in time, I always tell the story, it was like this pivotal moment. I was working at Morgan Stanley Dean Witter at the time, and every single day I would get this paper calendar out and I would cross the day off the calendar. And it occurred to me one day, I was like, why am I so excited to like cross a day off a calendar like I'm serving some kind of prison sentence? Like, this is not right. And that's when it occurred to me that there was more to just kind of hitting the benchmark and achieving those goals and, pleasing people and being recognized than to life, and that's what really had me pause and go, what am I missing? What really fills me up? What brings me joy? What, lights my fire every single day? And that was what had me pivot into going to do the inside work and the personal development to know that there's a better way to get there. You can achieve, but you can achieve with fullness in your life and with passion and love every single day. And that was pivotal for me. It was the people pleasing and just the striving and, crossing those days off the calendar that made me go, wait a second.
Wow. Well, I'm going to take that apart. So first,
Yeah.
it almost feels like what you've endured, what you've went through, somebody must have sort of, I don't know if it was an intervention or some of the crisis, but was it somewhere where you just sort of woke up one day and realized, I don't want this anymore? Was there sort of a moment that allowed you, that made it so burdensome that said, wait a minute, I need to do something else? Or a coach, maybe.
Oddly enough, it wasn't any one. It was just the way I started to feel day after day. It
Mm.
was exhaustion. Like I have to get up and fight another battle today.
Wow.
And that was what kind of had me crossing the days off the calendar. And truly, I wasn't unhappy.
Mm.
Like I was already building wealth. I was married. Like I had all these things that made me kept saying like, no, life is good. This is okay.
Mm.
But it was the exhaustion. I was like, I don't want to do this another day. Like, what am I fighting for? What am I grinding for? What am I trying to prove? And it was that feeling that made me go, there's got to be a different way.
Wow. And that must be even rooted in your experience too, that even made you brought that awareness. Because what I often see is that women just keep going, right? It
Yeah.
never even have the, I would say, even the skill to reflect. Well, wait a minute, I need
Hmm.
to stop. And the second thing that I want to even ask you is that what you're seeing is seems so normal to you, where achieving something while also being fully alive. How did you even arrive at that awareness? And because I often feel like women, it has to be either or. It's not, it can never be both and, as though the
Hmm.
choice is presented as an impossible choice. And this idea where what good is achieving the world and losing parts of who you are, losing yourself.
Hmm.
And that's really kind of what we are seeing here as a narrative for so many women who are go-getters and they want to achieve things, which we should. We have a voice in our society, but they wake up one day and realize, I don't even know who I am or what I want.
Hmm.
Parts of myself are so wounded that I'm just burnt out. So how did you arrive at that wisdom, which I think is really wisdom, to say, well, if I'm gonna have, I want to have it, but at the same time, I want to get there in a way that makes me feel alive. What was that
Yeah.
awareness like?
It was a journey, but it was a simple thought of what is the why behind my achievement?
Mm,
And the why behind my achievement for a long time was to prove something, to
mm,
be independent, to be recognized, to, you know, conquer things. Like it was just it for all the wrong reasons.
uh,
And when I stepped back and I said, if I let go of all of that, if I say that I don't need that anymore, and I just look to the things that fill me up and the things that I love, my values, which I didn't know at the time, and
mm,
really reflect on like, what are my values in life? Then I can start to achieve, but from a place of what motivates me are my values.
mm,
You know, I love certain things in my life, right? So if I put that behind my work, now I've got the passion and the energy and the fullness, pushing towards that achievement. There's nothing wrong with achievement, but
sure.
it's the reason that you're trying to achieve that you really have to dig into.
Yeah, and the reason could be the prison. It's
Yes.
really what I have seen. So, twofold question. Number one, how was
Yeah.
that experience for you, for your children, and also for your husband? Because I feel like, they get to witness your journey of choosing yourself. And how
Hmm.
how did that impact them? And I'll ask my question later on so that you can kind of focus on that first.
Absolutely. Well, oddly enough, that was a long time ago that I started to make that
Mm,
pivot, but it's been a it's been a continuous journey. Like
wow.
people often think that, oh, you do this thing and then you're there. I've been on this journey for, 25 years myself, and even more recently made a bigger pivot to shift into what I love and who I am. And it was a big change for my family, a major change. I remember coming home and they were like, we don't have groceries. Hey, like, what's going on? Are you making dinner tonight? Like all the things that I used to give, kind of shifted. And so it was a big adjustment for them. Temporarily, it was hard, right? I didn't pivot as smoothly and as intentionally as I probably should have.
Sure.
They didn't have the warning. I was just like, oh, there we go. Let's do it. But in the long run, what it created was the space for all of, both my kids and my husband, all of them to go, wow, this is what it looks like. Like when you really do what you love and you're passionate about something and you're putting yourself forward, wow, the joy. I see the achievement. I see the joy. I see the fulfillment. I see the space, the nurturing. All of everything that I used to give increased drastically when I started giving to myself.
Wow. And it probably wasn't immediate, which is, I'll just share this. When I first started doing the woman's school, and we literally,
Mhm.
like, my husband was running a successful business and he jumped in to kind of be the CEO. And my son was, honestly, he was sort of angry because we had to cut down
Mm,
lifestyle. And for 2 years, he sort of saw us wrestle, fighting for this dream. And I kept saying, well, this is what it means to fight for your dream. But he really couldn't understand it. And then it was after sort of we gained the success, it's like, this is what it means to fight for your dream and delayed gratification,
yeah.
which was so, I couldn't have not taught them that, Angie, with
Right.
my own words. He had
Yeah.
to see my suffering, my, vulnerability, the risk, the courage, the day in and day out. So what you probably did for them is what you model for them is a gift that keeps on giving,
It
which
is.
is a harder choice, I think, because we love our children too, and we want to be
Mhm.
able to kind of not risk that comfort. The other question,
So
why do
true.
you think so many people today, primarily, women, fall into the trap of proving and pleasing? What do you think is a root cause of so much of that?
Mm. I think it really varies from person to person based upon their past experiences and their childhood, honestly. You can have someone like me who was proving and achieving because I was ignored, because I didn't have the
Mm,
attention. You could have somebody else who's proving and achieving all the time because their parents incentivized the achievement and told them how good they were every time they did something great. So I think it stems from so many different areas, and it's why it's so important to look back in your past and
mhm.
not dwell there, but really understand like, what was that like? And what kind of decisions did it encourage for me? There's nothing wrong about digging into your past. We're not going to, use it as an anchor. We're going to use
Sure.
it to see how we can move forward.
Yeah, like really, it's a great source of wisdom. Is
It is.
in the past, and there's I think always sort of this narrative to, we're afraid to kind of go there, right? I think
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
we lack the tools. I love this quote from Vernon Howard. It says, "A cave you fear to enter holds a treasure you hold,"
Mhm.
and it's a quote I held on to when I'm afraid to do something or to go somewhere to dig a little bit deeper, because I think that's probably why you're here, to do it in a way
Yeah.
that's whole and not compromised, and
Yeah.
so maybe pivot into some of the business and what you've observed, even, as a coach. What do you think is a roadblock to people creating a fulfilling business that's not just space and achievement?
Most people don't know how to delegate, and so they build their business
Mm,
with them as the center point, and they get stuck there. And they don't believe that anyone else can do what they've done. They're in this space of, well, if I've done all this to get here, then I have to keep doing it to keep it.
mm,
And that's the biggest roadblock. It's going to, one, cap your actual business performance, and two, it's going to cap your joy because people who start businesses are achievers. I mean, just by nature, they are achievers. You won't meet somebody who started a business who doesn't want to achieve.
mhm,
So, by that definition, there's going to be very little guardrails in the situation, and they're going to push the boundaries, and they're going to be lacking in these other areas that they value so much. So then all of a sudden it becomes this war, your personal joy against your business and what you get to choose, kind of like what you said earlier. So the shift is really being able to bring people in to trust, to
mm.
delegate so that you have other people on your team and you can fit your values into your business as well.
That's such a hard lesson, but it's
Mhm.
such a necessary lesson, especially when you're still starting. But I don't even think it's only for when starting, it's even when you start scaling.
100%.
Yeah, and I find that it's even more challenging, I think, when you feel like you're expanding, but then you don't know how to find the right people, because it's one thing to be able to delegate and to have, okay, I need the right person, but to find that right person that
Mhm.
is also going to honor your values. I mean, it's a slew of skill compounding together, would you say? I mean, to even
It is.
learn that, where do you even begin to teach people how to even begin the skill of developing the ability to delegate and to kind of expand past your own limitations?
First and foremost, I would say, just as kind of a motivation for people to go about this a different way. When you get to the point where you realize you really need somebody, you are already overwhelmed. And it is really hard to go do the work that you're talking about, to understand what your mission is, your vision, and your values, to understand who you need. So it often ends up creating employees that are not the right fit,
Mhm.
desperation, scarcity. So I throw that out there as a kind of a warning, like do the work ahead of time. People often start businesses and they think, well, it's just me, like this is all I need right now. And that may be true, but eventually you're going to get to the point where you do need someone different. And if you've already done the work on what is my mission and vision with this business, what are the values that my company holds, even though it's just you right now, that when I bring somebody on, they're going to embrace those same values. If I envision my business a year, 3 years down the road, who would be these next
Mm.
players in my business? What would their role look like? What would the responsibility look like? So you have to kind of do this building and dreaming ahead of time, even though it seems silly because you're one person and a lot of times people don't even know if their business is going to succeed. You still have to do that work because when you get to that point, like you said, all this work in the different layers, and you go, I need somebody, you have all this gold right there in front of you to start to look at and go, I've done the work. I know what my values are. I know who I want to bring in here, what they would do. And it makes the process so much easier. And I know that doesn't answer the direct delegation question, and we can do that. But that is just such a crucial part of that process. And it becomes easier to delegate because you already know these are the people that I need. These are their responsibilities. So therefore, that's what they're going to take off of my plate.
Wow. I will tell you, I've endured a lot of those pain,
Yeah.
just starting a business from not really even knowing how to, have the right people or delegate the right person. I mean, I would just say you save a ton of money. Just by
Hmm.
knowing what you want, what you don't want, and planning ahead because really
Yes,
it's a huge cost to not
it
have the
is.
right people mentally, emotionally, and financially, to not
Hmm.
know your values and also to it's why I like what you said that it's a little usually probably too late from the moment you realize I really need help. And I would also say, Angie, it's really no different in the home front. What I mean by that is as a mother of 8, we often think we also have to do everything on our own because
Hmm.
we have something to prove that a strong woman
Yes.
means I can do it all by myself. And that's never been the infrastructure. I think that allowed people to thrive is that we need, an army of people around us. We used to have our grandmothers and a mom, but just the way infrastructure society right now, we often mothers have to feel like they're doing everything on their own. And then then compounds to mothers who want to also build a business outside where they feel like, well, I've got something to prove. Yeah.
Hmm.
And really,
Hmm.
you cannot do it on your own in the home front or in the business front if you want to live a fulfilling life that can scale and maximize your potential. And it's often like a roadblock of sort of, years or years, I think, of just believing that the only way to be a strong woman is to do it all by yourself.
Yeah, it's true. Like we're wired to think we get this like badge of honor,
Yes.
that we've done this and we've earned this. But I always tell people, do you know what is the hidden prize in that? Not so good is resentment. We do all these things and packed in there, regardless of whether somebody wants to help or not, when you do it on your own, you're going to build up resentment. And that doesn't work well on the home front.
It's not a
You know,
sustainable model. No,
it
it's just,
isn't.
and that's why I think the burnt out comes. And I also think I've often been pondering this word pride in the
Hmm.
sense it's this idea like you kind of have this false sense of self where you
Hmm.
don't need anyone, which then becomes a thread of how we deal with everyone else. We don't receive help from our spouse. We don't receive help. I got it, and
So true.
it's a lack of vulnerability that Brene Brown talks about because it
Hmm.
makes us feel weak when we feel like we need to ask for help. And I think we need to shift that narrative right now because this burnout culture is costing us the mental health, it's costing us breakdown in relationships. And so,
Hmm.
um, and really unfulfilled potential. Would you say that? Then all of a sudden, do you see that where people are burnt out and then all of a sudden they're done, they're not fulfilling
Yeah,
the next thing that they want to achieve in your maybe you can speak on your experience of people who just kind of give up.
absolutely. But you said something that I is such a big piece for people as far as, kind of doing everything on your own. That was a major shift for me. I did everything on my own. I
Mm.
mean, I drove myself to the hospital for a surgery because I was so adamant about somebody not taking care of me. I mean, it's ludicrous. My family would be like, "What?" But I was no like they were no match for me. Like I demanded. And it's so crazy. But what I realized and what people don't understand is that when you demand to do so much for yourself and you don't let other people in,
Mm.
that you take away their ability to be something for you. You take away that ability to deeply connect and be of value to you. And that is crucial for a relationship. Who wants to be in a relationship when you don't feel like you add any value to somebody's life?
Yeah. Wow.
So that was such a game changer for me, is going, this isn't about me. I need to look at, what does this do to the other person in the relationship? Everybody wants to help and be of value. And when you take that independent stance, you take it away from the other person. So that's huge.
That is huge. And really, when we can't receive, inevitably we devalue the other
Mhm.
without probably even knowing it. Like you said, everybody wants to feel valued in that sense. And is that just kind of, it's so fascinating to me that this idea, I think, to me, of where did women come to a point, and I just specifically because I speak to women, develop sort of this almost pattern, right? Patterns
Mhm.
where we really reject people that are willing to sort of help us. We put up this wall, and I'm fascinated. How did that sort of come into the play of the narrative? And that's why I go back to this idea that strong woman means I can do it all by myself. This
Mhm.
sort of lack of vulnerability that I think, Angie, we don't even have language for. It just I'll just drive myself to the hospital. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm not strong. I'm not saying I'm not vulnerable. I'm not saying I'm just gonna drive myself to the hospital. Like we don't even have
Mhm.
any metric to say, that's probably you not receiving help from somebody thinking you can do it all. I mean, where do you think that mindset has been sort of so permeated in our culture that's leading to so many women, I think, burning out?
I think, I mean, this is something I have not done a lot of research on. You probably know better than I do, but this type of like behavior and mindset comes from generations and
Yeah.
generations and generations that gets passed through. And, I think women have this belief born in them of like, I don't want to be a burden. I need to protect myself. I need to be independent. I don't want to be hurt. And so that's where these things come up, They almost try to protect the relationship they have with themselves and with a significant other, in that sense of like, well, if I'm not a burden, then they won't leave, right? I won't be trouble. Or if I never depend on them for anything, then I'll always be okay in case they leave. So I think some of these mindsets get wrapped up into things, people's thoughts. And again, depends on how you were raised and what you were exposed to. But everything that we're talking about here, spills into that burnout. Because if you are never letting anyone help you, if you
Mhm.
feel like you're doing it alone, even if it's by choice, that's all going to drain your energy. And then, women and men too get to this place where it's like you've reached below that threshold. So it's not like you're running low, like you're tapped out,
Mhm.
and you lose the strength to go, how do I change this? So it's so vital that we don't get below that, that line that really takes us below the zero mark to where it's hard to help ourselves.
Yeah, which I think can only really, in my opinion, can only be done through coaching and community because I think we can't pull ourselves up day in
Correct.
and day out. I just think that um, maybe we can for a few,
Hmm.
but not really sustainably. And that's why, this idea of empowerment is good, but it's really about equipping. It's really about
Hmm.
you need to build skill after skill. The only you can build skills through accountability and coaching. You can't just do it on your own, which obviously I'm passionate about because I feel like if we just gave women skills, maybe we wouldn't be burnt out.
Hmm.
If
Very true.
and we gave women skills to even receive because a lot of times, Angie, I just realized that we just don't know how. Like I
Hmm.
think that we don't know how to receive. We don't know what that looks like. We don't know what it looks like to be independent, but also not take away our freedom. Some of these things are kind of, especially in the last 100 years, that we have been able to achieve, I would say, a good amount of freedom, at least in the West. How do we work with that freedom? Where we don't exploit ourselves just because we can do everything and we can do whatever we want, doesn't mean we should. It doesn't mean we should,
Right.
you know, burn our bodies out. So I think part of it is almost just a learning of our journey towards greater freedom and not just exterior freedom.
Mhm.
able to achieve all these great things at the cost of our interior peace.
Mhm.
And that's why I feel like, the next, I think, rise of a movement is really towards interior freedom. What is it like?
Abs
Yeah. What is it like to achieve something without losing who you are interiorly, which
I love that. I
I'm
love
passionate
that.
about.
And you said the word peace, which just it hits my heart. That was like the one of the first things I chose when I went on this personal development journey, and it's a word that comes up from, gosh, 90% of the people I talk to just want peace. I just want peace, and that definition is different for everybody, but it just shows how that's just a lack for people. Most people are missing peace in their life in some way, shape, or form, and it's just craved.
Yeah, I think it looks different, but I think it feels the same.
Mhm,
And I think
absolutely.
but I think that then plays into sort of a universal desire that we all carry in our heart for
Mhm.
that fulfillment, a desire for peace, for joy. I think no woman says, "Less peace, more chaos," and
Right.
but it really, it sounds so silly, but here's the thing that I realized in doing this work is that women don't even want it because they don't think they deserve it.
Mhm.
And I think it's too much to ask. And so, whatever narrative that we've been playing, and the distinction that I always tell women, Angie, is that just because you deserve it, you deserve peace, that doesn't mean you don't have to work for it.
Sure.
And I think that's an important distinction. I deserve peace of mind. We all do. But I also need to really work on managing my mind. It's
Mhm.
a skill set. And then that I feel like then gives women the freedom to say, oh, I can want it now. And I think that's the goal, I think, for you is, to help women achieve the things that they want to achieve without compromising their peace of mind, because ultimately it's unsustainable, and I
Mhm.
think the data has actually, I was just looking at a recent data from Yale where women, they're looking at this data of women that, in spite all the freedom we have, um, in America, this was specific, really women are not peaceful. They're
Mm.
unsatisfied and sort of kind of trying to decipher, where do you think this is coming from and what is it? And I think it's part of our own growth, I think, as a culture to kind of see sort of, how we can equip people, but which I think goes back to just training women, with a how. So, anyways, that to me is obviously my passion is that if we could give women the skills, then I think less people would be burnt out and more people would achieve the business things. I mean, the business achievements that they actually want to achieve. So if you're, speaking to our guests right now and you're saying, what advice would you give them to begin the journey to feel fully alive while also achieving the dreams that they have in your heart? What would be sort of the three-step process that you would walk them through?
I would say first and foremost, I've been talking a lot about this lately because people go, "Well, how do you even start?"
Mhm.
And I think you might be in the same space too. Like we're really good at being in it. Like once somebody wants to go, we're like, "Okay, here you go. Here's your program." And we've got all these great tools and insights and support. But there's a lot of people out here who haven't even gotten into their journey yet. And so for that, I'm a big, fan of going, you need courage to try something a little bit different, to shake things up in your life, to look at the things that maybe aren't so comfortable for you. You need community,
Mhm.
how to be around other people that you're hearing different things, you're being asked different questions, you're being inspired. And then you have to have clarity. You have to be willing to look at what you want, look at how you feel, do that inside work of knowing, what do you want? Those three pieces were actually what kind of
Mm.
gave me my step into my journey.
Wow.
And once you get in the journey, you've got all these magical people that'll help you, right? And you can have all these tools. But I think the part that is hard for people is getting to that journey.
Yeah.
So have
Courage to get
courage to
that
change it
journey.
up. Yep.
That's
Courage to change
why,
it up. Clarity and community.
wow. And I don't think that you can really even take that. The courage is just even to me the first step to even, allow the community and the clarity,
Yes.
right? Would you say
Correct.
that? And
Yep.
it's so vulnerable because it makes
Yes.
you feel like you're risking into this unknown world or to tap into something that you have no idea how this is even gonna work out. You
Yeah.
know, but then what's the
It's true.
alternative?
Well, that's what I always say, put your choices in your hand. you know, courage and be a little vulnerable and get uncomfortable or stay where you are. It's your choice. I'm a big believer that you get to choose your choices, but you need to put both of them in front of you and really decide between the 2.
Yeah. I always think of Andrew David Thoreau, life of quiet desperation. That's what I
Mhm.
feel like, you're alive, but we have no life,
Mhm.
which is, I think,
Yeah.
has become an epidemic. So, well, I think there's a lot of great, rich depth that we have kind of engaged here. And I think my last, maybe final question is that what would be Angie's wisdom, that you can share if you had one thing to share with people? What would that be? What wisdom would you share?
Gosh, it's always so hard when it's one thing. I go back to values.
Mhm.
Know your values and live your values. That was just the game changer for me. It's everything. If you know your values, you know the choices you can make, you know the things that you want to do. They're just the foundation and the compass of your whole entire life. So if you do nothing more, figure out what your values are and lean into them every single day.
How do you I'm gonna have a cow because so yeah,
Yeah.
how do you even begin to discover your values, Angie, for somebody's out there and saying, "I don't even know what my values are."
I have a values assessment worksheet, and there's tons out there on the internet to give you an idea, but I like to ask a couple of questions. One, if you think right now of your fondest memories,
Mm,
what like lights your heart up? What makes you have those warm and fuzzy feelings or maybe goosebumps? Like, what were you doing in those fondest memories? They're going to be attached to your values, whether it's family time, spiritual time,
mm,
um, challenge, time in nature, like dig that way. Also, go back in the memory bank of like what you did even as somebody who was much younger, whether you were in high school, whether you were in college, like what did you do that really like lit a fire in you? That's
mm,
often there too. And then just think about your day to day, the way you live and go, what really fills you up? Like if I just said you have a free day today, you can do anything that you want, what would you say? You're
mm,
often going to lead into your values. You might be like, oh, I would just go sit in a corner by myself. Great, you like alone time. I would be outside in nature. Great, you like nature. I would go for a long walk. You like physical activity. I would gather all my family together. Okay, you like family.
mm,
So if you really give yourself the space to think about it from that perspective, you'll know what those values are.
wow, and I think that's key word is the space to think about it.
Exactly.
It's so because I think sometimes when people are even in that space, they don't take the time to make the time, but you don't even know what to do with that silence.
Mhm.
Angie,
Mhm.
where do you even begin to think? And it's so vulnerable. And,
Mhm.
and that goes back to, again, that wisdom of courage and
Yeah.
going to those places. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today and for such I would say, a really peaceful. I think your presence radiates peace. That's what I
Mm.
experienced from you. And I think it is a byproduct of your interior work and all the work that you've done, for probably in the last 25 years and continually. So thank you so much. And I know that our audience will be blessed by this work. And where can they find you if they want to learn more about you?
And thanks so much for those words. I've definitely worked hard. Like I said, peace was the first thing. So I appreciate your acknowledgement there, January. And you're such a great host and ask such meaningful questions that bring up great conversations. So thank you. And for anyone who wants to find me, Angie Wisdom Life Coach on Instagram, Angie Wisdom on, online, the website, YouTube. I put out all sorts of good free stuff just to help you find your way. So there
Oh,
it is.
well, thank you again, and thank you until the next Practical Life Training.
Thanks, January.
If you like this Practical Life Training in the Women's School, click subscribe so you can get access to more of our Practical Life Training. Also, comment below and let us know what you think so we can hear from you. Don't forget to like this video and share it because our vision here in the Women's School is to give you Practical Life Training to help you become who you were created to be for such a time as this.